That would be my biggest thing, is just, it's okay to be you. Figure out what works for your family and take your time. You don't have to, that term, lose your identity. You don't have to lose your identity. This is just something new you add to it. The same way when you get a job and you start as a secretary, and then you're, an admin, and then you're moving your way up. Just adding something to your resume, and that's all you're doing when you're at home, is that same thing. So instead of scrolling Instagram, which I know we all do, learn something. Go pick up crochet, knit, do something granny like. It's okay. Just find something that brings you joy and take your time with it. I think that's the thing. It can seem like drudgery, and it doesn't have to.
Welcome to the Paintbrush Prairie podcast. I'm Kinsey Ashcraft, a boutique owner, firefighter wife, and mama of 2 cowgirls, homesteading on a cattle ranch in Oklahoma.
And I'm Talia Watcott, a Western artist and illustrator, mama of 2, and wife of a mountain man, raising babies in the mountains of Utah.
Together, we share a passion for the Western lifestyle, homemaking, and Indian paintbrush flowers.
We're here to inspire and encourage you as we each create a simple but beautiful life on the prairie.
To another episode of the Paintbrush Prairie podcast, Season 4, Tell Your Story. Today we have Karri Buck of the Rabbit Hole Creations on with us. Karri is a mama to 5 and a Mimi to 2. She has owned and operated 2 businesses. She has traveled and lived in a couple different states and currently resides in Texas. So Karri, thank you for hopping on and joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, we're just going to start it off with having you kind of introduce yourself, tell us your story from your perspective. So just go ahead and give us some information about you, tell us where you grew up, and kind of about your family.
Okay, so I was raised West River, South Dakota. So that's where you hear the long O from. You also have to keep up with me because I talk really fast. I'm the oldest of 4, and like I was raised on a farm ranch. My folks are about an hour west of here. It's still, I guess, what I say home, because in 2007, my husband took a job doing wind turbines out on the road. I often say we were doing wind, or we were in wind, and people assume wind Arkansas, and that was nothing to do with where we were. But he was in wind for 7 years, and so we traveled, and we were in 42 different states over a 7-year period, and we landed in Oklahoma in 2014, and then about a little over a year ago now, his job changed, and we moved here to Tennessee, not Texas, but to Tennessee. We're just east of Memphis now. I have 5 kids. My oldest is 23. My baby is about to turn 12. We have 4 boys, and then we have my daughter. And I didn't think we were capable of having girls after having 4 boys, but we do. We homeschooled for 17 years. This is, we're actually into our 2nd year ever having our kids in a traditional school. They're in a little private school here, which is something I never thought we would ever do, but we are, and that's where God has us. I've owned 2 different businesses. I owned a cleaning company. My kids were very much my help in that situation. And then in 2021, I started a candle company and officially closed it last year. So it was just a couple of years. I loved it. I do a little bit of everything. Like I told Kenzie, the reason it's Rabbit Hole Creations, or was Rabbit Hole Creations, is because my friends joke that when you become friends with me, I suck you into the rabbit hole. And we might talk about, I don't know, algebra, menopause, tires for your vehicle, and maybe where you get your home insurance, all in about 60 seconds. So I don't know if that helps, but that's a little bit about me.
Well, Karri, I met you through my shop and instantly felt like a friend of yours. You just have that way about you, and you're so personable to, I feel like, everybody that you meet. You're so easy to talk to, and I think it was about 3 to 4 years ago when you opened up about your journey of homeschooling, and it was such an inspiration and encouragement to me. So can you tell us a little bit about your homeschooling journey with your kids and how that has evolved into a more traditional school? Because a lot of our audience are homeschool moms, so we just kind of like to get different perspectives from different guests on this podcast.
Absolutely. Homeschool was one of the best things we've ever done, and we may end up doing it again. It just was awesome for us. The reason we started homeschooling was at the time when we started, our oldest was going into kindergarten, and they had just closed the country school down. And where I'm from, there was a lot of country schools when I was growing up. And when I say that, I mean there was, well, when I graduated from eighth grade, there was 13 kids, grades K through 8. So it was a very small school, and it was 5 miles from the place I grew up. And so my husband at the time worked with my folks, and when it came time to send Hayden to school, there was no country school. They had just closed it the year before. And our choice was to take him to town, which is 35 miles one way. So it would have been 170 miles, no, 140 miles. Sorry, math sucks. I'm really good at homeschool. 140 miles a day to take the kids to school, and I would have been taking a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old every morning and every afternoon, and I just wasn't going to do it. And so I decided that I needed to do something as a different option, and as God would have it, I've never met a stranger, obviously. I was doing survey work for the government at the time that I was doing agriculture census, and I ended up, well, you gotta be from South Dakota to understand this, but I ended up on the edge of the Cheyenne River, which is basically kind of where the world drops off or feels like it. And I met this incredible woman who became my dearest friend of 19 years. And she introduced me to the concept of homeschooling. And so I was like, well, this is simple. Why not? It's not simple. Not even a little bit. But we dove in, and of course, I was, the traditional homeschooler that I had the whole plan, and I had 8 hours planned out. I think our first day made 30 minutes. Like my 8 hour plan was gone in 30 minutes. I learned pretty quick. I didn't know a lot. So we did that for a year with Hayden, and then Steven took the job being out on the road, and we decided at that point that we might as well be together as a family. It didn't make sense for us to stay at home and for him to be out on the road, and the company would allow us to travel with him, so we did. And so we packed up all the kids. We only had 3 at the time, so I say all of them, but only 3 of them. And we went out on the road and we homeschooled. And so that was different because we didn't follow the traditional, August, well, now August, but September to May school schedule. We just went year round. And that gave us the opportunity whenever we wanted to come home to South Dakota to visit, we could do that. If we got the flu, we didn't worry about if we were missing days because we just went year round and we knew we'd whack out our 180 days. We used every opportunity. Like I said, we've been in 42 different states. Our kids have seen so much. And I don't mean educational stuff. I mean life stuff. Like they've seen educational stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we've been in some of the coolest museums I've ever set foot on. I mean, I've been in zoos. We've met people. I mean, just my kids have had some incredible opportunities, but they got out there and they got to be with kids that, you and I are going to label. We're going to call them, say that they have Down syndrome or something like that. My kids didn't have a clue. Not a clue. They just thought I was a kid at the playground and they just played with them. They don't get color. I mean, like they know color, but it was, to them, they just played with every kid, and
Right.
and they hung out with adults, and they went, fishing with adults, and they baled hay with adults, and just they could function in life because they kind of had to.
Yeah.
We moved a lot. They didn't get the option to just be in their hole. They had to get out of it, and so anyways, so we homeschooled up until, like I said, last year was our first year our kids were in school, and I have no other explanation than God. I really felt God was nudging us to put them in this traditional school, and just for this season. I don't know what happens because with my husband's job, we aren't in one place very long. I mean, even when we were in Oklahoma for 9 years, we moved 4 different times in 9 years. So we're probably only going to be here another year or two with this project that he's on. And then I don't know. And if there's a school that God leads us to, awesome. But, the kids are good at being homeschooled again. We don't have bad feelings about it. It was an incredible situation for us. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's hard days. I mean, you've been there. That bus, the school system looks really cool some days. It just does. If you're a liar if you say otherwise. But like this morning, I took my kids out to breakfast because we start school on Monday here, and I took my kids out to breakfast at a local cafe here. And I used to do that all the time when I had all 5 kids at home, and those are some of my best moments with them. And we would sit at those coffee shops my kids can order a latte better than anybody I know. I mean, they know every syrup, every mixture, you name it. They're a bunch of little coffee geeks, and it's great. But they loved that kind of stuff. And we would just sit together. And I don't know what we discussed. I mean, did we discuss the ranch? Did we discuss having seen whales? Whatever it was, but it was, I don't know. There was just something there that you can get it if your kids are in traditional school. We still get it, but you have to be specific about it. And it's just something that I will forever treasure.
That's awesome. I love just like your perspective, because I feel like there's so much of culture that like expects everyone to like fit into this little box, and it's like you send your kids to this school and you do it this normal way, and like that's what normal people do or whatever. But it's like you have to do what makes sense for your family, and obviously for your family, homeschooling just made sense. And so, and I love how like, where you're at right now, like you're not necessarily homeschooling, but it's okay. Like it still is working for your family, and that's the most important thing. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did your homeschool journey, I mean, and kind of like when you were talking about how much you've moved and traveled, it was kind of like making my brain explode a little bit, because I'm just like imagining like having to pick up and like start over in all these different places. Can you kind of like go into how you managed that as a homemaker and how it kind of developed you, and what you learned from that?
Yeah, it stresses me out. Like, I cannot imagine. Like, my next move, I want it to be like, that's the place I'm going to die in. Like, I don't want to,
Yeah.
I'm a very rooted person.
Yeah.
Well, I remember as a kid, I would always tell my mom, I was like, I'm going to build my house right over the hill from yours because I need to be here next to you. Like that was, I can remember saying that as a kid. But as I grew, there was always this, I don't know, angst in me. And I suppose it was definitely not for good. Like I did not use it for good for a long time. But when you have kids as young as I did, I was 20. My husband and I were both 20 when we had Hayden. We were barely 22 when we had Hadley, and I think we were just turned 24 when we had Hudson. So we were like, bam, bam, bam. God had to work on me a lot. And when I was at the ranch in South Dakota, it was great. I just always thought the kids would be raised there, all the things. But I can look back now and see that I was reliant on people around me. And that was God's way when he gave Stephen the job out on the road. That was God's way of working on me and saying, you have some things to work on. So if you think that I have made all of these moves very willingly and very, Mary Poppinsy, I did not. There was, Ursula off of Little Mermaid. Yeah, there was some of those moments. It wasn't good. It just wasn't. I can remember. I mean, so one of the things you have to know what the job is that because you're in people assume if you're in green energy that you're like pro green energy and you're all the things. I don't care if you're in green energy. I don't care if you're in oil, if you're coal, whatever. If you got a job, I'm here to support you. Green energy is not a guaranteed job any more than coal or oil or any other thing is. And so our job ebbs and flows with who's in the White House, 100%. So we don't get to pick when we move. We don't get to pick when the next thing would happen. We could be laid off like that. We could be across the country the next day. My kids know, I learned this years ago. In case you ever have to move, here's a tip. You take masking tape or some sort of tape. You figure out how big the inside of the U-Haul trailer is that you get, and you mark that off on the floor. If it fits in that little spot on the floor, it goes with you. If it doesn't, it's out. So it was just each time was different. There was places like we moved to West Texas. We were in Big Spring, Texas. No hate to anybody in Big Spring, but the year before we moved to Big Spring, Midland, Odessa had cleaned out their gangs, and their gangs moved exactly an hour east to Big Spring. So we lived on a street with gunfire on a regular basis. We would go to the swimming pool with gangs. The gang members would show up. Their bodyguards would show up, circle the pool, make sure it was safe, and then the gang members and their families would come in and swim. We learned how to make a really graceful exit.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, do you guys know what a water bug is? Do you have any idea? Okay.
Mm.
It's like a cockroach that's eaten like plutonium or something. I mean, it's like 4 inches long. I lived with those in my house in Texas. It wasn't great.
Oh my
Just wasn't.
gosh.
But we've also been in things like, I'm going to pause and tell you, and I'm sorry, there's going to be tears here. It's been 12 years. We lived in upstate New York. We lived in Western New York once for Stephen's work. We lived in upstate New York. We lived there in 2012, or I'm sorry, yeah, 2012 when Hopeland was born. Hopeland is our youngest. She's our girl. She's our final piece of the puzzle. And I had 4 pregnancies. We lost a couple, and we were there. I was pregnant. I was many thousands of miles from family, and I wasn't sure how this was all going to go. And I'm thinking, how am I going to take care of all 5 of these kids and homeschool and all this stuff on my own? I ended up very, very sick, very, very sick. And I ended up switching hospitals at 37 weeks. I switched doctors at 37 weeks, y'all.
Wow.
And I ended up giving birth in Burlington, Vermont. The doctor that was on duty that night was not my pick. He was a jerk. He was black and white. This is how we do things. And I'm that same way, so I don't work well with people like that. The whole night went really, really bad. And at 6:00 that morning, they came in and they said, "We're taking you right now." And they wheeled us across the hall. And I heard when they pulled Hopeland out, I heard that things weren't right. And as it turned out, my life was on the line and so was hers. And it was 5 days after she was born before we learned that in 20 years of medicine, the doctor had never seen anybody like her, and I survived. Sometimes mama does. Never baby, and never mama and baby.
Mm.
So I know that it sucks to move like I do. And there have been a lot of tears, angry tears. I'm not moving. Me put my foot down just like a little kid. And I always get over it. But for 24 hours, I'm like, I'm done. I'm not moving. You can't make me. But every place we've been, God has had a reason for us to be there. Every place. And the reason he had us there was because that doctor didn't take crap off of people like me. And he didn't care how I felt. And when he made that call, he made that call. There was less than 5 minutes. They said in 5 minutes, she and I would both have been dead.
Wow.
God moved us for each place where we're supposed to be. And that's what keeps me going in those times when, like, we were in Oklahoma and we rented a house that was perfect. It was everything I wanted. I think we got 3.5 months out of it before the septic system collapsed and we had to move like in 24 hours kind of thing. I looked at Stephen and I was like, they can't make me. Come get me. I was not going to move. I had just moved. But if he hadn't moved me to Ada, I wouldn't have met you, Kinsey. I mean, I just think about that. I mean, all he did was move me from Fitzhugh to Ada. It's not like it's that far, you know? But he moved me. He moved us. And we're here in Tennessee. And I don't know why I'm here. This is definitely not what I would have picked. And not that I love it here, but this is not, I would never have thrown a dart at Matt and been like, that's where we're going. But he has us here for a reason. So I don't know if that answers your question, Talia, but that's where I'm at.
I just love that. And I think that's so important. And I mean, your situation is extreme compared to a lot of people, right? Like most people don't have to pick up and move and don't have to basically start things over and over and over again. We have it much easier, right? It's like we might just, be mad with circumstances being what they are. Like, oh man, groceries are like really expensive and I'm having a really hard time and I really am just angry and mad about it, or different things like that. But I think that it's so important to remember that God has his timing, and just because you're not where you think you should be right now doesn't mean that you're not where you're supposed to be, right? He has you there for a reason, and he has you in a situation, whether you're just meant to learn something from it or you're meant to bless someone else. I think it's really important.
Yeah. I think one of the other things with us being out on the road, that was so, I don't know, integral maybe, was I always tried to make every place home. And, sometimes we lived in, like, the first time we were out on the road, we went from this beautiful ranch house that my folks had that my grandpa had actually built for my grandma, then I grew up in, and I was raising my kids in the house. And we went from this huge house to a one-room hotel room. One room. It wasn't like one bedroom. It was one room for me, Stephen, and 3 kids. And that was really hard. That first couple of moves was extremely hard. But then I got in this groove of, I need to make this home. And so every place I tried to make home, that didn't mean I went out and bought everything to decorate or that kind of thing, but it became things like, if you come to my house now, you're most likely going to get chocolate chip cookies. Like, everybody knows I can make chocolate chip cookies, and they're pretty good, I think. but you can come, and that's something that's always here. There's always cookies here. There's just pieces for our kids. I made them each a blanket, and that blanket went with us everywhere. So they always had home. I mean, we lived in our house in Oklahoma, the house that we bought, we lived there for 3 years, and we made it home. We did all the things, but I just did it at a smaller scale when we were out on the road. And I think that's what made the difference for us, because I saw a lot of families fall apart. I saw a lot of relationships fall apart. We were on the road with hundreds of people. And that was the thing that seemed to be the issue, was that it was one big party for them. And we just tried to live life. Like, we got library cards, we got part of churches right away. We just became home wherever it was, whether that was for 2 days or 2 months. We didn't ever know. So we just made the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that saying where, like, it's not the house that makes the home, it's who's inside. And that's why I wanted to have you on, Karri, is because, you did mention to me, like, I don't feel like my story is worth telling, but it is. Like, I have, from the outside looking in, like, your homemaking experience is extremely different from the traditional homemaker, like Talia said. We see all of these accounts that are aesthetically beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it kind of gives off that perception that that is what every homemaker, homesteader's home should look like, and that's not true.
Yeah.
And so, I just love that your take on, you can be a homemaker and anywhere you go, and no matter how much you go. And so I love that take on, we make chocolate chip cookies and every kid gets a blanket, and, like, you just make it feel like home no matter where you go. Your kids, you are your kids' home. So in that same vein, is there any advice that you would give to women who are just starting out with their homemaking journey that maybe you wish you would have been given, or maybe some who've been married for some time and are kind of stepping into this role for the first time? Maybe they've worked for a long time, or they are moving, or whatever. What advice would you maybe give to somebody if you're sitting down with them and talking to them about this?
If you're young, like, if you're just, and I shouldn't say young, because some people don't get married till they're 35 or 40.
Right.
But, I guess if you are just kind of starting into this homemaking thing, start small. I thought my house needed to be decorated like Better Homes and Gardens because my mom's house was. And so I spent a lot of money that I didn't need to spend on that. Like, just start small. Pick like one thing that really makes you happy. If it's a couch, if it's a rug, if it's just one thing, and just be like, okay, that's it for right now. And maybe instead of the time that you would spend buying the things and decorating the house, do something you enjoy, because it can be the one thing I hear people, especially moms that have worked outside the home in a traditional 9 to 5, and they come home, whether it's with a newborn or whether they come home, their kids are 10 or whatever. It's terrifying for them because it's very lonely, and it's like everything that they've known. I kind of, very loosely, because I have the utmost respect for anybody in the military, so I hate to be like, this is just like, it's not. But in that same vein, when somebody leaves the military, they have been used to the right lane is here, the left lane is here. This is it. That's really similar to working in a 9 to 5 or 12, 7 to 7 or whatever, 12-hour shift at a hospital or something. It's very similar. When you get to work that at 7 a.m., I do this, this, and this. And when I clock out at 7 p.m., I do this, this, and this, and it stays here. When you come home, it's drunk squirrels. It's just,
yes.
It just doesn't line up the way that work does. And so give yourself some grace. And when those days suck, it's okay. Go have coffee. Take the kids. They're naughty. They're screaming. They're running. They're hanging from the curtains. Grab them and take them and go buy them something from the coffee shop. You can get steamers. If you don't know, for little kids, they can just do steamed milk with syrup in it. So they don't have to have caffeine. Don't give them caffeine. Just give them steamed milk with syrup in it. You can take them. There's no rule that says you have to stay home and have a bad day. You can just go. I have met one of my dearest friends in the world because I had a crappy day at the house and was like, you know what? This sucks. Let's go. When I packed my kids up and took them to Chick-fil-A, I mean, so that would be my biggest thing is that don't set an expectation like you were talking about. We see these perfectly curated accounts of moms that are making perfectly organic meals. And I love this. People stop me, they're like, oh, I see you eat so healthy, all the gluten-free stuff and all the vegetables and all that. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't see. I have Oreos. We eat Oreos. I don't care. We put syrup on our pancakes, and if I could have some of the stuff that I can't have, believe me, I would have it. Cotton candy, I mean, just that would be my biggest thing is just, it's okay to be you. Figure out what works for your family and take your time. You don't have to, that term lose your identity. You don't have to lose your identity. This is just something new you add to it. The same way when you get a job and you start as a secretary and then you're, an admin and then you're moving your way up. You're just adding something to your resume. And that's all you're doing when you're at home is that same thing. So instead of scrolling Instagram, which I know we all do, learn something. Go pick up crochet, knit, do something granny like. It's okay, But there's a lot of not granny things out there. I have a friend that her daughter paints pictures on fingernails like Van Gogh. It's just incredible. Learn how to do that, but just find something that brings you joy and take your time with it. I think that's the thing. It can seem like drudgery and it doesn't have to.
Well, I think it's a great thing to show your kids too, right? Like, it's good to show your kids that, like, mom has a hobby or mom has an interest or a craft or something that she's like really into. And like, nothing against my mom, but she worked all the time. And then when she wasn't working, she was just like doing stuff with us kids and hauling us around. And so I like was the same. I'm like the same way. Like, I don't know how to just like I either work or I do stuff with the kids or for my family. And then it's hard for me to be like, oh, I'm going to like take 2 hours and, work out because I want to. And it's like my hobby,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I think it's important to show your kids that it's okay. And mommy is going to sew something right now or, do something that brings her joy so that they can learn that it's okay to do that when they're an adult.
Absolutely. And I think so many moms feel like they have to entertain their kids. And I'm not going to lie to y'all. I didn't entertain my kids for nothing. I turned them loose the any chance I got. I know that sounds awful, but there was no point. I am never going to entertain them enough. And I get that whole mom guilt thing, like feeling like, okay, if I'm not taking care of my family, if I'm not taking care of my house, if I'm not taking care of my husband, if I'm not taking care of something, I'm wasting my time. I fight that. I mean, to this moment, I fight that. I really have, even to do my own personal Bible study, I have to stop and say, it's okay. Everything else will wait for 30 minutes while you do your Bible study. There's just that aspect of it. And so being able to lay that guilt down and not entertain your kids. I mean, give them a box and a spoon and say, see you in 30 minutes. I mean, my mom locked us out of the house and I didn't die. So, I mean, at appropriate ages, obviously, but I'm just saying, I mean, that entertainment value that moms feel, and I think that's a curated thing. I think they see all the fancy crafts and they think they have to do that. I'm sorry. Yeah. I failed my kids. I failed them big because I just didn't entertain them.
Well, we say often boredom leads to creativity. And if they can't be bored, they can't use their imagination. But I'm very one of those, like, go outside and find something, because that's kind of how I was raised too. And it's like, if you're bored, I will give you something to do that's probably not what you want to do. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm very much on that. Yeah, I'm very much on that same page.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Well, so you kind of talked about how you are in a new state now, and you've jumped into a new season of life, and you're working more now. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Oh, well, so when I moved here, I was in the middle of paralegal school. I had decided that was something I needed to do. I didn't, as a stay-at-home mom, you quote unquote don't have any skills, and I think about that. The management skills I have from raising 5 kids, homeschooling them, and moving as many times as we did, pretty impressive. But that doesn't work on a resume. So I thought, heaven forbid something happened to my husband, but I needed to have something that I could put a good roof over my kids' head. And so I went and got certified to be a paralegal. So I have that, and I'm excited about that. I was doing that when we moved here to Tennessee, but then kind of just went nowhere. Like I don't have enough experience. I could go into Memphis easy and find work there, but that's kind of defeating the point because I need to be able to get our kids from A to B and that kind of thing. And so a job opened up at our local chamber, and it was as a membership director. They put me in the spot, and I came to life in ways I didn't know I had in me. I loved it. I've always been. And so with all of our moves, I love to go to stores. I don't always buy stuff, but I will walk through, and I will. It just fascinates me, and I've gotten to a point, and I say this very very humbly, like not as in I know all the things, but I feel like I have a good thumb on things because I'm pretty accurate if I walk into a store to tell you whether that store will still be in business in 5 years because of the way it's set up, because of the way the ownership runs, because of the way the people are behind the counter, all that kind of stuff. It just factors in so fast. And I visit with people, obviously, I visit with everybody. And so when we got here and I got this job as a membership director, it gave me even more insight into businesses. Got to sit and visit with the owners and just pick their brains. And because one of my jobs was to find their pain points and to try to find a way to resolve those issues. And so we're the town we're nearest is about 5,000 people. And then there's another one that's real close by. It's about 2,500 people. Our entire county is about 40,000. So it's all small towns here. And listening to the struggles I have being this close to Memphis, and being technically farm country, a lot of this is still very rural where we are. Well, I say rural. My dad would laugh at that, but it's still pretty rural. There's farm fields, there's corn and there's beans and stuff growing here. But so I got to do that job, and I got to do it for a few months, and it just came to a point where we don't have anybody here. It's just us, and we have some great people that are always willing to pitch in with my kids, but I can't count on them the same way that maybe I count on my mom or one of my sisters if they live close by. And so we had to make some decisions, and just things. One thing led to another, and I got to retain my job with the chamber, but now I do their PR, and so I do articles every week on different businesses within Fayette County. And so I just go around and I visit with the different business owners, and I hear their story. Why did they start? What keeps them going? What do they see as issues? What are they trying to do for the future? Just just get to visit with them that way, and I love it. If you can't tell, I love it.
Yeah.
It's just fun for me. I mean, I'm seeing the more I talk to them that it's like they all need like this little elf. And Kenzie can probably speak to this. When you have that business, you don't really always need, if you have employees, maybe you have 3 employees, but you need like 3 1/4. Like you don't really need a fourth, but 2 1/2 is certainly not going to cut it, and that third is just barely getting you by. And so I'm trying to now shift to being able to help with that virtually. And so I'm working on doing virtual assistant work for different businesses as I'm doing this. And so I'm hoping to develop this what I've learned doing the PR stuff to be able to go to businesses and say, hey, here's what I have to offer. Do you need somebody to enter POs? Because I didn't understand how big of an issue purchase order entry is. I mean, it's just, I've got a family member that owns a store, and she's like, 14 hours of pure accuracy. That's what that is, and just walking through that stuff. I didn't understand that could be a problem for people. Sometimes the store owners just need somebody to send out their emails, but you can't hire somebody to be on staff to just send out your emails. But you could pay somebody $200 a month to do it for you. And so that's what I'm looking at doing, or what I'm developing doing, is that so that I can still be part of the small business. And I think I have something unique to offer just because of all the places we've been. I mean, California to New York, North Dakota to Texas, and everything in between. I've seen a little bit of everything. I have a lot to learn. I have an awful lot to learn, and I'm willing to do that with people because I think that's the fun part is the learning part. I mean, I have learned so much with these business owners down here. They have let me in, and not just into their store, but into their hearts. Like I've gotten to hear just the very lifeblood that's behind it, and that's huge. I mean, that's what keeps America going is those small business owners.
Yeah. Amen. Well, I think you have the perfect resume for the job. Like out of anyone, like just saying like, I don't have what I need for these resumes. I'm like, you have everything. Like I would have loved to have had that back in the day when I was kind of in the thick of having an actual brick and mortar still. But I love that.
Thank you. I'm hoping that I mean, it's slowly happening. It just, it's one step at a time. And getting to do the PR for the chamber has been really, like I said, that's been a lot of fun. And getting to write and seeing people enjoy the writing. That they're because when I write the articles, I don't just write it about what you do. When I get done writing an article about you, I want the people to already know what the building smells like. Like when they are done reading that article, they know what that building smells like. They know where the floor is going to creak. They know, who's going to holler at them. They already know that, and they're anticipating and they're excited to get in there. That's my goal.
Yeah, you're telling their story, like which is the theme of our season. Like I love that. I love that visceral feel of, that was my inspiration for having a brick and mortar, because that's what I started with, and I wanted that old timey general store feel, like bringing back the old fashioned aspect of shopping in person with a family. I love that.
Yeah, I loved your store. I mean, I still love your stuff, obviously. Still buy stuff from you, but when you had the brick and mortar, that was just like our happy place. And when people come to visit, I was like, we have to go there. I mean, it was just like, yeah, we loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, we had a good run. It was fun.
Yeah.
Going from there, Karri, what are some of your big dreams and goals in life?
Oh my gosh. More grandkids. I have 2 of those, and those are the greatest thing ever.
Well, I've been told that they are better than kids. That's what I keep getting told by my parents.
I don't know if they're better, but they're sure different and they're fun.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade them. they're just we kind of got 2 at once. And they were just they're just great. I mean, I got to have them for about 3 or 4 days when I was in South Dakota this summer, and got to have them. And the youngest one finally called me Mimi. She was finally able to say that, so that was really great to hear that from her. And that part's awesome. Goals and dreams, all of me wants 40 acres out somewhere where there's nothing. And just to be able to work from home and garden and do the things. I don't know if that's what God has planned. There's parts of me that thinks he's never going to have us settle down. I guess we're just going to move the rest of our lives. I don't know. I just kind of am along for the ride now. I've given up telling God what to do. I tell him where I really don't want to be, so maybe he knows those places, But I would love, as my kids grow, because we're down to, the 2 youngest are at home, and we've only got 6 years till the youngest one graduates. I'm not going to be that old. I'm right at 50 when she graduates. I would love to, at this point, and I say that, but maybe God does something different. But I would love to be able to still be doing something with small businesses. I would love to be able to help them somehow. It's something non-traditional. I don't want. It's not the Small Business Association is great, and we have lots of different branches of that here that help small businesses. All of that's awesome, but that's all there for business owners already. I want to fill a gap. Like I want something that just makes their day a little bit better, that takes just something off them. Because when you own a small business, I mean, I think like my dad, he ran a lot of acres in South Dakota. He's slowly retiring. And I think maybe officially retired. I don't know how a farmer ever really officially retires, but he's slowed down a lot. But I think, he was a small business owner, and my brother-in-laws, both my brother-in-laws are small business owners in agriculture, because that's what they're doing. Their whole life is in that. When you're a small business owner, that's everything. You go to bed thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it. Because if you aren't putting food on the table. Your family depends on that. Whether you are feeding thousands like my dad with the farm, or whether you're feeding 30, it doesn't make any difference. And so when people say my name, be like, oh yeah, she could help you. Like, that's what I want somebody to say. She could help you. I want them. I don't know. I don't know what my spot is in every situation, because, like I said, I can enter purchase orders. That's awesome, but that's not going to work for a farmer. So what would help them? What helps a boutique owner versus a cafe? Like, just those kind of things. And so I guess that's my thing, is I really hope that I can fill a gap and just help somebody else's dream keep growing, be that little piece that maybe makes a difference for them.
That's awesome. I think it's so funny because before we got on the call, me and Kenzie were talking about how we don't want to do the businessy stuff. We just want to create and then have someone else that tells us what we need to do, or does all the legal stuff, or the taxes, or all the technical businessy stuff. So I think that's really cool that you're doing that, and it's definitely needed for our people who have a more creative brain like we do.
Yeah. I want to have the creative brain. I want to, I can see this stuff. I can't do it. I could paint a picture in my head, but if you think it's coming out of here and it's not happening, nope, finger painting is all you're going to get from me. So I'm not going to be that creative person, but that's why we all have different gifts. I mean, God gave us, just did.
All right. So kind of going back to homemaking to kind of round things out, but what is the most fulfilling thing that has happened within your home over the course of all these years?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question I wasn't prepared for. Probably when my kids come home and they're home. They just know, our third boy is in college in Oklahoma. He came home to visit, or came here the first time. And I say home because this is wherever we are is home, right? So he came home to visit. And anyways, I think he was here about 5 minutes and somehow managed to get my cookie jar and try to sneak it out the door, being funny, and shatter it and lose 42 cookies. He counted. Um, you know, he was home to get mama's cookies. And when I hear those boys, because there's just, I only have one girl, so I can't. Talia, do you have boys or girls?
I have one boy and one girl.
Okay, so you get 50-50 on this. I knew only boys for so long. So I am a total boy mom. I know what to do when we're swinging from the chandeliers. I don't know what to do when we're having an emotional meltdown. I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I've got it both here, so I've got to figure it all out.
I will say my boys are huggers, and I love that. And that's probably the most fulfilling thing, is when they come home and they just pick me up and I am mama. Because I'm not mom, I'm not mommy, I'm not mother, I am mama. And they know if they say mom, I turn and I give them the funniest look, like, mama, I'm sorry, mama. Because they know that's who I am. And to hear them say mama and, give me a hug and come in and plop down and know this is home. That's probably the most fulfilling thing, is just to know that they're okay here, whether they're still living here or they're grown and gone.
That's awesome. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Just, because trust me, we have our days right now. We're in the little years, and I have a 7-year-old girl, and she's just kind of at that age where things start getting real emotional. And sometimes I'm like, I really hope she likes me when she grows up.
She will. And I will tell you, if there's anything when it comes to the little ones, and even the ones, the age your girls are, Kenzie, but put them in your lap and just hold them. You don't have to say anything. Just sit with them for that minute. And a lot of times that's all they need. And it took me a long time to realize that. I say that 23 years into parenting. I could not have told you that 5, 10, maybe even 15 years into parenting. But I can say that now, that Because those little years make you question your will to live. And then that stage when they can't drive, but they're in all of the activities, then you begin to question your will to live again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like a limo driver. Like, I'm just a chauffeur right now.
Yeah. That stage where they can finally be responsible for milk and cereal up until they need the limo driver is like the golden years. Those little years are so hard. They are so emotionally draining. They are just, it's tough. It's just tough, Talia. And I remember those years very, very, very well, and just know that whatever you're doing is the right thing, because God gave you those kids to you because He knew you were the mom they needed, and that's really huge.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I think Zach and I talk about all the time, like, our main goal is just they want to come back home. Like, when they're 20, 30, 40, they always want to come back home. Like, they just gravitate towards us, and that's like the ultimate goal.
Yep.
Well, Karri, again, this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I just love you and I love your story, and you're such a precious person and just someone that encourages me as a human, but also a wife and a mom, and just you're so inspiring and make me want to be better. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. But we always round out our episodes with some rapid fire questions. They're just real lighthearted and fun. Just a little bit more about you before we end this. But before we do, could you let our listeners know where they could find you and follow along with your journey?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook at the Rabbit Hole Creations is where you'll find me. I warn you, when you get on there, I don't know what you're gonna find. I mean, it's hard to say. You get my stories, and one night my husband didn't know what stories were, so I was showing him what stories were, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you've got like political stuff, and then you've got female stuff." And he's like, "And it's just like all over the place." I was like, "Yeah, it's the rabbit hole. It's what it is."
That's why I love it.
You'll never find the same thing twice, that's for sure. So just, you've been warned. That's all I got to say on that. And my website is it's the www.therabbitholecreations.com. You can go on there, and that's where I'm setting things up for being able to do virtual assistant help. And if you're in my area, obviously I can do stuff in person, but across the miles, everything's on there. You can send me your email. You can see some of the blog posts that I've done. You can see the stuff on Instagram, which could, we'll just have to see how that goes. I figure God knows what He's doing. So that's where you can find me at this point.
Well, we'll be sure to link that up in the show notes. And I will say, you'll find some of the best book reviews on Karri's page if you're a reader, which goes into our very first rapid fire question is, what are you reading right now? And I know it's probably multiple things because you're a multiple book reader like I am, but you can give us one.
Yes. Well, I'm going to give you two that I read because I read two at a time. So at bedtime, I've learned I need to have something that doesn't require me to process stuff, because otherwise I was reading like technical books at bedtime, and that was not ending well. So right now I'm reading, if you think how it's worded, The War of Art? The Art of War. No, The War of Art. I always have to think about that, how that goes. So it's The War of Art, and it's about the creative mind and like what we do to our kind of like self-sabotage ourselves, and it just makes you stop and go, oh, I do that, and you just want to kick yourself. But it's really great stuff. It's simple, and some of the chapters are only a paragraph long, so you can read, it's not something you have to like be able to sit down with for 30 minutes. You can read it in 5-minute chunks. It's really awesome. It's Stephen Pressfield who writes that one. And then, because I'm 43 and they're reminding me that I'm getting old, I have one that I'm reading. I think it's just called Perimenopause is what it's called, but it's by Dr. Anna Garrett. And I figured I probably better get ahead of the swing on that one. So I like nerdy stuff too. So that's why I said a little bit of both.
I'm going to have to read that first one because, yeah.
Sounds like
it's what I need right now.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think Talia would like that one for sure.
Yes. You would, and I do have to warn everybody because not everybody's like me. I can, eat the meat and spit out the bones. It doesn't bother me. There is a little bit of swearing in there. There's not a lot, but there is a little. So if a little bit offends you, maybe not the book for you, but otherwise, it's good.
Awesome. All right. Sagebrush or blue stem?
Alfalfa.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
I'm from South Dakota. That's what we have is alfalfa. We probably have blue stem. I don't know. I never paid attention as a kid. I know it's terrible, but I love the smell of alfalfa or a wheat field. Man, those
Yeah.
two will just bring me my knees. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. They're beautiful. Okay, favorite part of being a homesteader?
Oh,
Or
getting to lick the
homemaker?
bowl. Getting to lick
Yeah.
the bowl. Or the beers or whatever, at the end, you always leave that little extra bit. I mean, my mom scraped it clean. She was crazy, not me. I leave a fair serving in the bottom of the bowl and I make everything else, serve it to everybody else. And then I keep that little extra cookie dough for me.
Yeah. Fun fact, all chance getting salmonella, I don't really care. I'm going to live my life.
Amen.
And I always save me a little bit of cookie dough in the fridge.
Absolutely. Yep.
When I make cookie dough, it's like I only eat the cookie dough. I don't ever eat the baked cookies.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
that's the
one
best
for
part.
Me, one for them. One for me, one for them.
Kindred spirits we are.
All right. What's one thing you have on your bucket list?
Oh, I don't know. It's a toss-up, and I've thought about this the last few days. It's either getting that 40 acres out in the middle of nowhere, or we got to live in Maine for a couple months. We got to live in a freak situation. We got to live just like 100 yards from the ocean on a little cove. I mean, it was like, it was in a condo. I mean, the whole thing was God ordained. It should never happen. It was so cool. I don't know. Part of me wants to go live in Maine and write a book, and part of me wants to go live on the 40 acres out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. So maybe I've got two things in my bucket. I don't know.
Well, either way, you should write a book.
Out.
Yeah, you need to write a book about all your travels. Okay, what's your favorite steak cut and how do you like it cooked?
Ribeye, medium rare, no questions asked.
That's the best.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, what's your favorite wildflower?
All right. So Kenzie's going to help me on this one. I was going to get out my handy little Oklahoma flower book, and I forgot to do this. But in Oklahoma, in the road ditches, are these like pinkish purple flowers. And if not, there's pink ones that are just really faint, and they die quick too. But these are like a pink purple globe looking thing. I don't know what they are, but when I would see those, they just made my whole year. Like I was like, okay, it's spring whenever I would see those. And they die so fast. Like the kids would bring them inside to me and they would die really fast. But those are by far my favorite. I don't know what they're called, but I love them.
Are they like a coneflower or like a columbine?
No, they're like they've got like a almost like a little cup shape to them. Like they're and I don't know if I found them so much in Ada. I saw them some while we were there, but most of the time, like when we were back in Davis when we first started, I saw them all the time in the road ditches there. But they were like they weren't a purple, but they weren't a red or a pink. Like it was a combination of all of them together. And they grow real close to the ground, and they don't grow like they almost like not so much a vine, but kind of that way.
I think I know what you're talking about. I just can't think of the name.
They're just beautiful. My mom came down on a trip one time and she saw one up by Stillwater. She's like, "Oh, I saw the prettiest flower." I was like, "Those are my favorites. Those are the ones."
Maybe it's that like ironweed or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
it's probably something really, really simple. Or like a thistle or something.
Yeah, probably a noxious weed.
Okay, log cabin or old farmhouse?
My husband has his way, it'll be a log cabin. If I have my way, it'll be an old farmhouse. So it'll probably be a tent. There's just something about an old farmhouse with a slamming screen door and, it just is. I don't know.
Okay, what is your favorite recipe or meal to make?
Like I said, chocolate chip cookies probably is a favorite. We also we also are okay if pink eye happens around here. And let me tell you why, because this is the rabbit hole here. If you get pink eye, and it's not the bacterial kind, you can use evaporated milk in the eye to soothe it, like over the weekend. This comes from an eye surgeon. This isn't like wives' tales. This came from an eye surgeon, like to get you through the weekend. And a lot of times it clears up the pink eye. Cool part is if you take the evaporated milk, you don't need very much, like a quarter cup. You stick it over in this container, and then you take the rest of it, you turn it into fudge. So when pink eye happens here, we all get excited because we're getting fudge. So that it's probably one of our favorite meals just because it's one of the, I don't know, it's one of those with a story to it, but I don't know, we're just, we've done, because we've lived in so many places, I don't know. I know we like lobster a lot, and Maine was really cool for lobster. That was great. So probably something where we could have lobster for the meal and fudge for dessert, maybe some cookies for breakfast. I don't know, something like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever had an animal that had a big impact on your life or was memorable?
Yeah. We didn't have a lot of pets growing up. We had a dog and a cat kind of thing growing up. So we had a lot of cattle. And I think it was end of my freshman year. Yeah, in my freshman year. My dad suggested that I go learn how to AI cattle. And so I went to school to learn how to AI cattle. And his best friend had a herd that was about 2 hours east of there. And so they asked if I would come over and I would, heat detect for them. So the first summer, they put me on this horse. She was like 20 years old. Her name was Sugar. Sugar was the perfect horse for a starter. Like, because I had horses when I was a kid, and I had a bad horse accident, and Dad got rid of him after that. And so then we didn't have horses for a long time. When we never really ever had them again. But then I went over to my dad's best friends to heat detect for him, and they put me on Sugar, and she was great. She didn't run very fast. You could easily keep up with her on a gallop, all the things, but she had a flaw. She was afraid of snakes. And she didn't actually care if it was a snake or if it was electric fence or a string blowing in the breeze. She didn't care. She stopped and you went. So after the second trip over Sugar's neck, Dad showed up with my grandpa's old breaking saddle, big old swells. So you lock your knees underneath. I wasn't going anywhere. So I really learned how to re-ride on Sugar. So the following summer, they put me on Rascal, and he was my favorite. Sugar was great, but Rascal was my favorite. He was a big horse. I'm 5'8". I have almost a 36-inch inseam. I don't have short legs, and I would have to get up on the catwalk and walk him along so I could get on the horse, because if I got off in the pasture, it just wasn't going to end well. I was not getting back on that horse. He was a big horse. I loved that horse. He was never mine. He was just mine during the summer when I worked there. But he was big. He was fast. He was kind of how I operated at the time, probably how I still operate. But I did. I loved that horse. That was a great one.
All right. Share one random fact about you.
I always said I wanted a dozen boys, but I would stop when I got to a girl. And when Hopeland was born, that was part of the deal with her life being saved in mine, was that there were no more. So that's been kind of the running joke, was like, see, I knew what I was talking about. I was going to have 12, but I got my girl and we're done. So kind of called it.
That's cute. That's an amazing story that you told. I'm still blown away by that.
Yeah.
She's pretty great. She's we always call her the cherry on top. We have all those boys that are just awesome. And then we've got her, and she keeps me on my toes. She's a great kid. All of my kids are great kids. She's being the girl, we see things differently. And she's not my best friend. And I don't ever want her to be my best friend. I want to be a friend to her, and I want to have a great time with her. But she makes me, when she turns and gives me the look, or I turn and give her the look, and we just stare at each other, I think, yeah, we're meant for this. It's pretty great.
So cute. All right. Well, I think that rounds out the episode. So thank you so much
Thank you,
for
girls.
being willing to be on today. I know it was short notice, but we've loved having you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
This
thank
has
you
been
so much, Karri.
awesome. Yeah, well, I hope having me on here, I think to all the women that have helped me over the years with us moving, how many people have stepped in just at the right time and have been there for whatever it was, whether it was a hard day, a good day, whatever it was. The friends I made along the way, all those were ordained for a reason. And maybe I today talking, that somebody else hears that and thinks I can be that for somebody, just, I don't know, pass that along.
Yeah, this has been a really inspirational episode for me, and I'm sure that our guests will love it. So thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate you, girls.